Close the eyes. Once again, land softly in this moment. Landing as softly as possible in every moment. And sometimes it's easy. And sometimes it's not. Be okay with both. And don't allow your presence to be based upon the conditions that you find yourself entering in outside of yourself. Allow your presence to be based upon the conditions within yourself. Cultivate peace, softness, kindness, strength, veracity, humility, authenticity, joy, love, presence. Draw all the hands together in front of the heart, and we'll lift our voices in one Om, taking a breath in. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jesta Rajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanu Tibsi Dasadanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Ghritachi Shagmando Vacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And gently releasing the hands down, flutter the eyes open. Nadia, see me after class because I'm going to replace that book with another one so that I want to add a little something. Very good. So, I was thinking this morning. So many things came to me during the yin class, and that's usually where I get the intention for the talk here. But there were so many things. I was like, okay, slow down, Ma. What would you like me to speak on today? And so then, as I was leaving class, I was thinking courage. To speak on courage and what that means to us. And the moment that I open up my heart and mind to whatever is coming through, a lot of things start to happen. My process is an interesting process. And I don't fully understand it myself. I just know that it's the way that things are meant to come through. You can call it a flow of consciousness, you can whatever you want to call it. But for myself, it's just a matter of being open and saying, okay, courage. What would you like me to touch on about courage? And then a question comes. And the question is usually a definitional question. What is courage? What is courage to you?
Having the strength to stand up for what is right.
Beautiful. What is courage to you?
Being able to do something or act in a way that might be difficult.
Very good. What is courage?
Doing what you think is right, especially when it's hard or there's forces against you. It's an uphill. It's not the easy thing. There's a difficulty there that you need to push forward.
Very good. What is courage to you?
Fearlessness.
Fearlessness. Very good. What is courage to you?
In this moment, courage to me is being vulnerable and be able to show up as yourself and be able to receive.
Yeah, very good. All of you. Absolutely. Put all those together, Each one of you make a beautiful point. Now, so courage is this skill, I suppose, to show up in ways that are authentic to you when you don't want to, when you're afraid, right? When you're not sure if it's time, when you're not sure even of your own safety sometimes. Courage sometimes places us in situations where we might not even know if we're safe to be there, but there's something else calling us. So then as I was thinking about that, I was like, well, so what does it require to be able to do that? Like, what does it require of us? Everything in this practice requires something of us. And courage requires something of us. Courage requires... So for some reason, I'm getting the impression of the kitchen and them washing the dishes, right? So we have a 3-bin sink. They fill the first sink up with soapy water. The second sink is the rinse, and the third sink is the sanitation soak. So the first sink gets filled up, and it gets filled up with soapy water, but then eventually it's got all other stuff in there too, right? It's got like food particles and stuff like that they're washing off, and it gets kind of gunky. So what do? They pull the plug. They let all the old stuff drain out so that it becomes an empty vessel. And then they fill it with something new. Fresh water, fresh soapy water, right? I'm not suggesting you fill yourself with fresh soapy water. But what I am suggesting is that courage requires us to pull the plug. It requires us to pull the plug on our long-held fears, our long-held anxieties, our long-held story. It requires us to pull the plug so that we can show up. Let those old ideas and thoughts drain away, and something else comes in. So what comes in? I don't know, I guess we could call it hope. We could call it vision. We could call it love. We could call it lots of different things. But all of the old stuff that is not useful in a moment that needs to have courage drains away, and then we become full. And the only way that we can become full is to be empty. It's a very Buddhist concept. It's also a very, very yoga concept. The only way that we can know fullness is to become completely empty. And courage requires that we become empty. Empty of the things that limit us. Empty of that. And then we have to somehow or another find the faith within ourselves that this is what I'm meant to be doing right now. I'm acting in a courageous way because that's what I'm meant to be doing. It's part of my dharma. It's part of my path. It's part of my journey in this life. And that needs to be enough. That alone needs to be enough. Not the follow-up questions. Are you sure? What do you think? Are you absolutely positive? Could you also confirm for me? And we go to 10,000 people and we ask them to confirm our courage, but they can't confirm our courage because they have no idea what we're feeling on the inside. Only we know what we're feeling on the inside. Only we know what we're allowing to hold us back or to allow us to progress forward. Only we know if we've truly pulled the plug on the drain and allowed whatever limits us to go so that we can be full of something else that we call empty or spaciousness or vision or love or hope or righteousness. Not righteousness as in the kind of righteousness that harms people. Righteousness as in virtuousness. To be virtuous. To be dedicated in one's life to non-violence, non-stealing, truthfulness, non-grasping, to be economical with our energy, to be content, to be clean in mind and body, to be compassionately disciplined, to be invested in self-study, and to have some kind of consciousness of that, whatever name you call that. We fill ourselves up with that. And the possibilities are endless. When you cultivate courage within yourself, does the outcome matter? Well, in a materialistic way, we could say to somebody, maybe, but in a spiritual way, we say it's the showing up that matters. It's the showing up that matters, because really you cannot control the outcome. You ever watch Titanic, the movie, right? At the end of the movie, the boat's going down. How did those people show up? Did they show up with courage? Or did they show up with cowardice? Some of them. Some. Which ones? Now, this is a pretty extreme example, but, hey, life is extreme sometimes. A lot of people died. Do you think that the people who died in an act of courage died more peacefully than the ones who died in cowardice? Do you think that their conscience was clearer? Yeah, 100%. 100%. Do you think that Jack died peacefully because he knew, and of course this is a character we're talking about, but it's still a reflection of life, but because he knew that his courage saved his beloved? Totally. So courage also requires a willingness to make sacrifice. Sacrifice doesn't have to be the life, but it's got to be something. Courage requires emptiness. So we need to pull the plug. We need to allow the old held stories to drain away. Courage requires spaciousness, and for that spaciousness to be filled with spaciousness. Spaciousness of hope, spaciousness of love, spaciousness of peace, freedom. But then it also requires sacrifice, and perhaps the greatest sacrifice next to one's own life that one can make in an act of courage is nonviolence. This act of courage is not meant to be an act of violence against another person. It's simply an act of courage. It doesn't mean that there might not be an altercation. It doesn't mean that, because you can't control the other person. But your intention is nonviolent. That's your intention. And that is a sacrifice for us as human beings. I remember back in the day, so I'm 62, so my education was much different than most of your educations. Back in the day, what did they used to say about dogs? They still believed dogs were only saw in black and white and stuff, crazy stuff like that. Such craziness. They also believed that human beings' natural disposition was beast-like. Remember those teachings, right? Yeah. That violence is our nature. And that the violence had to basically be beaten out of us, which made zero sense. But, from even a young age, I could see that was ridiculous. But that's what they believed. They believed that violence was our nature. And that's what they taught us in schools. Violence is your nature. Now you get it out of yourself. Yoga says, oh, no. Violence is not your nature. Violence is a disruption. Your nature is peace. Violence is a disruption. The nature of your soul is peace absolute. And so courage is also the embodiment of your natural state. It's who you naturally are. To be present. To empty the drain. To fill the space with spaciousness. To make the sacrifice necessary. And to be true to the essence of yourself. Because the essence of yourself knows what is right and knows what is not right. And you hear that voice. I love when people say the good angel versus the not so great angel, a little mischievous one, right? And it's The voice of your soul versus the voice of your ego. The voice of your soul tells you, you know that that's not the thing you should be doing. And the voice of the ego goes, oh, be quiet. I want to do it. What if they get mad at me if I don't do it? It'll make me more popular. It'll be this, it'll be that. But I'm afraid, but I'm worried. Yeah. And this little voice screams at you. This little voice whispers and says, just be present. Just be a vessel. And be a vessel for those things that matter. Do not be a bomb waiting to go off. Do not be harm waiting to happen. Do not be the short fuse. There's enough of that in the world. Instead, be patient. Be kind. Be genuine. Be trustworthy. Be friendly. Even if being friendly is met with unfriendliness. Even if being trustworthy is met with betrayal. Even if being kind is met with cruelty. You still be those things. Right now, we're in the midst of something called the Kali Yuga. Has nothing to do with the goddess Kali. But the word Kali means dark. So the word Kali, when it's applied to the Kali Yuga, is a time of darkness. And in the yoga tradition, there's 4 times, 4 eras. The first is the golden era. And in the golden era, 98% of people were empty vessels. 98% of people were naturally courageous, naturally kind, naturally trustworthy, naturally in tune with their heart and with their soul and with the hearts and souls of all other beings. 2%, and of course I'm making these numbers, but generally, this is the way it's talked about, is like the most of the population. But then this little bit of the population were listening to the other guy. They were listening to the mischievous little voice that was like, me, mine, mine, mine. The one that was angry, the one that was vengeful, the one that was envious, the one that was jealous, the one that was greedy. So the first era is called the Golden Age. The second era comes along. And in that era, anger, there's a movie, 28 Days Later. Anybody ever see that? It's kind of an end of the world sort of a movie where there's a plague that hits society and it's called the rage. Yeah. And it's contagious. And it is. Anger is contagious. Rage is contagious. So in the second era, we go from 98% and 2% to, let's just say 80-20. The number of people with rage increases because it's contagious. And rage screams, truth whispers. And so people are easily confused and they think if it screams, it must be more powerful. So they surrender to it. And so the second era, you start to see more problems, more conflict in society, more selfishness, more greed, more harm. The third era is more. It's like 50-50. So like half of society is engulfed in rage, anger, those types of things. And the other half are still holding fast to the song of the soul. Then you come to the Kali Yuga. And you know which direction we're going in, right? Yeah, it's not up. We're going down. And now it's like the opposite of the golden era. It's like there's a small percentage of people who are still in the spaciousness of the heart, and most people are afflicted with rage. And because most people are afflicted with rage, most people lack courage. Because rage does not have courage to it. Rage has madness. Unbridled anger has madness driving it. Madness is not courage. Madness is not strength. Madness is insanity. And the people who are residing within the heart, they need to be very careful, because that kind of unbridled rage is contagious. And so your practice is of absolute importance, that you have some anchor that keeps reminding you of goodness, some anchor that keeps reminding you that this too shall pass, because it always has and it always will, and things are changing every moment, and you just never know. But what you do know is that when things change again, kind of like there to be some goodness that has a foothold, so that it has a chance to grow and to move us into the next golden phase. Now, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that won't be in our lifetime. However, we're the stewards of it. We're the stewards of it. We're here doing this work to make sure that there's something left for the next generation and generation and generation, so that they have something more to work with. And that requires courage. It requires courage not to go with that flow, not to go with the flow of anger, not to go with the flow of the hyper drama that's going on in so many realms right now. It takes courage to say, I'm doing my part my way. I'm doing my part my way. I'm doing my part the way that resonates most gracefully with my heart. And it might not look like somebody else's way, but we need to understand that there's not one right way. There's a plethora of ways. Just like the old saying goes, there's one God, and there are 10,000 pathways to get to that. So one person's pathway looks one way. Another person's looks totally different. I love the way Ram Dass talks about it in his book on meditation. He goes, look, some people take a motorcycle up the mountain. Some people take the bus. Some people hike. Some people stop at the scenic overlooks and hang out there for a while and feel like, I've had enough, I'm going back down again. You know, what's at the top of the mountain is self-knowledge. What's at the bottom of the mountain is the chaos of the material world. And that's a teaching that's pretty consistent through a lot of lineages. That it's this journey, and that we're all at different points in the journey, and that we all have different ways of doing things. There's not a single right way. There's not a single wrong way. There's not an absolutely right way. And there's also not an absolutely wrong way. Because wrong is an interesting word, you know. And everything serves purpose, whether we like it or not. It's possible, I don't know, this just came into my mind, a little bit of a shock. It's possible that without the instigation of the violent players in the world, that those who are carrying goodness would become lazy in their goodness and thereby more vulnerable to joining the masses. So those wicked players, as we could call them, or those violent ones, whatever you want to call them, they could very well be doing us a small favor. Oh, I know, right? It's like, oh. Just another way to look at it. It doesn't mean you have to say thank you. You can just say, my purpose is now clear. All right. Yeah. And it takes courage to even say that. Does it not? It's like we need to be really careful of the symptoms of rage, right? We need to be very careful of the symptoms, because when we start denying the purposefulness of things that we are not comfortable with, that lends itself to hiding ourselves from the truth. And the truth of the matter is, it is completely inspiring, isn't it? It's like whatever it is that we're not agreeing with, it's moving us. It's saying, stand up, be courageous, be change, do something, support, whatever it is that you're being called to do. So to admit that, and to admit that openly, that could either be courage or insanity. I'll let you be the choice. You make the choice for that one. Yeah. So courage requires us to be that empty vessel. Now, it's interesting because when we're in a moment, if you pay attention, just close your eyes for a moment. And I'll invite you to think back to a time when your life required you to be courageous. Think back to a time. Think to just before whatever the situation was. If you can remember, think how you were in that moment. Maybe you were talking to somebody. Maybe you were just kind of full of happy, joy, satisfaction, worry, dread, whatever it was. And it became clear in some moment that you needed to be courageous in this situation that you find yourself in. In that moment of decisiveness that courage was needed, what happened to you? What did you feel? Just take a breath or two and try to remember what happened to you naturally without you even trying. The moment that courage started to show its face. And then flutter your eyes open. Can anybody put a name to it? What happened?
Determination.
What was that?
Determination.
Determination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Just like wholeness.
Wholeness.
Peace.
Peace.
Really like intrinsic wisdom.
Intrinsic wisdom. You pulled the plug on the drain. Maybe you didn't. Your soul did. Something did. You emptied out. Something else came in. It has to happen that way. So that when courage is manifested, it's not manifested in a crowded space. Courage comes in and replaces everything else. If it doesn't replace everything else, then it becomes tainted by whatever is there. And then it becomes vengeful, and it becomes rage, and it becomes other things. But when courage comes in, and the plug on the dirty sink water has been taken out, all the other stuff goes, and it's all replaced. It's replaced by spaciousness, by peace, by determination, by insight, by wisdom, by all these things that are spaciousness itself, that are patient, that are straightforward, that are present. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about the qualities of courage for those who just walked in. And we're talking about how courage requires a few things. And the first thing that it requires is that we empty ourselves. That we empty ourselves of our old stories, that we pull the plug. I gave the kitchen sink as an example. You know, the first bin is like the dirty soap water. And when at some point that dirty soap water, you got to pull the plug on it to let all that water out and then let something new in. And we said how the something new would be clean, soapy water. And I said, don't fill yourselves up with clean, soapy water, but fill yourself up with something spacious. Because courage requires space, not congestion. So courage in this day and age, in the midst of the Kali Yuga, in some way, shape, or form is at the mercy of the nature of the ego. Because the ego likes to disguise itself and justify itself. And you might hear people saying things that under other circumstances you would find disturbing, unkind, appalling, but it's being masked as courage. You might even do that from time to time. Say things that you might not otherwise say, absent modern day stressors. And then mistake the adrenaline rush of the rage with the experience of courage. Courage is not an adrenaline rush. Isn't that kind of an interesting thought? Courage is not an adrenaline rush. Courage is a stance. It's a presence. Courage is the connection of self with truth and the willingness to stand in that truth. And again, it requires a sacrifice. What's the sacrifice that it requires? Sacrifice of the unhealthy ego, sacrifice of the old stories, sacrifice of all of the pettier emotions that we typically get caught up in when we're angry. It requires the sacrifice of those things. Otherwise, it turns in favor of the unhealthy ego. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, we really need to be aware. We're not going to be perfect at it. Nobody is. But we do need to be aware of when we start kind of sliding down that hill. And when we start finding pettiness in our own attitude, we need to self-correct. When we start finding pettiness in our words, we need to self-correct. When we start finding little traces of those violent emotions, we need to point them out to ourselves and correct. The correction is not a cold, hard discipline. It's a loving kindness. It's a reminder. So last night in Kirtan, I talked about that anthropological study, right, of that community in Africa that they had not been in contact with the Western world. And they're like one of the last ones. And so anthropologists has watched them for a while. And what they saw was that they did things so differently. Like, it's almost a shame they ever even had contact with them, truly. But eventually they did. And you know, things changed, right? So everything is contagious, isn't it? Things changed. Their doors no longer face each other. They now have fences between their houses, and their penal system has changed drastically. It kind of infuriates to think about it. You know, it really does, because everything wants to survive. Rage wants to survive, because rage is you can look at it as an organic mechanism, even though it's not actually organic. But it is an energy, and energy just wants to reproduce itself. And so we just go putting our fingers out into the world like a web and say, you should be like me, you should be like me, you should be like me, rather than stepping back and saying, this is beyond beautiful. It represents potential. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Leave them alone. But instead, they went in and they changed them. Now, I digress a little bit because I just want to bring you up to par on what I'm talking about from last night. So, but what they did there was when the anthropologists were just watching them from a distance without them knowing they were being watched, they paid attention particularly to the way that they interacted socially. And they didn't seem to have a punishment system. Instead, what they did was, if somebody did something harmful to the community, they put them in the center of a circle and they reminded them of their goodness. They reminded them of all the good acts that they did. Everybody would be circling around them and the person would be in the middle. And they would be like, don't you remember when you helped me? Don't you remember when you showed up for your neighbor, for your grandmother, for your parents? Don't you remember the goodness of your own heart? And that's what we need to remind ourselves of. We need to be our own community that surrounds ourselves, because it's harder and harder to find out in the world. But I will tell you point blank, you don't need anybody else to tell you. You already know the truth. You're just not listening. That little whisper is there. And she or he is saying to you, Don't you remember? And this voice is screaming, have you forgotten yet? I'll give you more distractions so that you can forget some more. Don't listen to the whisper. And because this one's so loud and obnoxious, we think it has more power. So we look to other people and say, will you please tell me the truth? And no matter what they say, you will not believe it. No matter what is said by another person, you will not believe it. Because somewhere on the inside of yourself, you know that they are asking the same exact freaking question. And how can the blind lead the blind? How can the ignorant lead the ignorant? They cannot. So, drawing yourself inward, empowering yourself through courage, through becoming that empty vessel that stands in truth. Listen. Listen internally. You will come across people in your life who speak the truth to you. And it's important that you do. But the reality is, there's that old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but what? You can't make him drink. You have to make that choice. And if you cultivate the courage within yourself, if you practice being the empty vessel, practice listening, you will. You said something very beautiful before, and I immediately tuned right into what you were saying. You said, I said to you, I heard the music. And you were saying how it just comes to you. It's like already playing. And I know exactly what you meant when you said that, because I have had that experience myself where it's not me. I might be co-collaborating or something like that, but really the melody is already there. The words, the poetry is already there. It's all already there. You're listening. You're listening, and so you hear it. And then it becomes manifest, whether through your hands or your voice or your actions or your intentions. That's what it is. You need to empty yourself out so you can hear that which is not loud and obnoxious. The senses that we've been given as human beings are amazing. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. All wonderful. But the thing is, they're so tuned in to everything which is physical. But really, they're not meant to be tuned in so drastically to everything which is physical. They're also meant to be tuned into that which is subtle. But we just haven't gotten it down yet. The thing that amazes me about yoga is that the teachings of yoga, they're infinite. They naturally exist in the universe. These teachings, they're a natural form of wisdom that were not created by imperfect human beings. The imperfect cannot create the perfect. So these teachings, they existed, they pre-existed us. But at some point, they were kind of given to the human beings who made themselves empty vessels. And then they did their best to jot them down. First to memorize them, and then thousands of years later to jot them down. And then to come through time to us today, thousands upon thousands of years later. Here's the thing, let's just say 10,000, 80,000, 90,000, what, you pick a number. They knew. They knew what rage was. They knew what peace was. And they knew the path to get from rage to peace. And we think that we're at the top of the food chain. And yet we still haven't figured out how to walk that path. We still haven't figured it out en masse. Some of us may have taken some steps, but as a whole society who think we're so smart, who think we're so intelligent, who think we're so above, the deer and the fox and the insects and the birds and the fishes. We think we're so much more than that on the evolutionary scale. Darwin was a genius. But the one thing that he had a little bit incorrect was that we're at the top of the evolutionary scale. If you turn that upside down, he might be a little more accurate. Because we have evolved to the point of separation, which has given power to rage and to unbridled anger and to jealousy and to all these other things, where the animals are still largely connected to nature. With the exception of maybe dogs. Dogs become more and more human-like every day. They truly do. And to the point where they're acting like us now a little bit, you know? So I don't know that that's a good thing.
Yeah, now they have anxiety, right?
Exactly. Now they have anxiety, and now they have meds for their anxiety. Oh my gosh, it's so true. So in the tradition, we have something called involution rather than evolution. Evolution is change, period. It's not up or down. It's not to the better or it's just change. Involution is the responsibility of every spiritual being to involve themselves in the process of rediscovery of the self, rediscovery of the knowledge of truth, rediscovery of wisdom is to involve. And courage marries itself with that involution. It actually is part of the process of it, part of the process of that rediscovery. Questions or reflections so far?
I'll say, as I said about the song, I've also found to be true with mantras.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you're saying a mantra, you're really saying it along, like, you're saying it along, basically.
Yeah.
It's almost like a radio station. Like, it's sending out all the stations at once, but you can tune into it and hear what's...
100%. Absolutely. 100%. You're singing along with the universe. And you know what happens sometimes? A new person will come who has never chanted before. And they'll have a couple of different experiences. They'll either tune right into it and be like, oh my God, this, I don't know what just happened, but all I know is it felt like coming home and I want more of it. The next student will they'll be teetering. Felt good, but I don't know. I'm just not sure. Like, is this okay? Like, am I supposed to feel that good? Am I supposed to feel that good that easily? Oh, there's a whole psychology behind that. We could be here for hours. And then the other part of them is saying, too weird, too different, too quick, nope. And they're going back and forth. They're having a true internal conflict over this. And then the third student says, nope, 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 nope. When the student says no, what voice are they listening to? Yeah. And they're saying no because it's just too scary to think that their anger could actually be inappropriate, misplaced, not righteous. It's too scary to think that the answer, and this is the psychology of it, I'll keep it brief, it's just too scary for most people to think that the answer could be so freaking simple. I have lived my life for 62 years. I have built my story from the bottom up. It has many, many different interacting, complicated parts. And you're telling me chant? And after chanting for 5 minutes, I feel like this? What happens to my story? It doesn't hold water. It crumbles. I can't have my story crumble. Who the hell am I without a story? Forget the chanting. It must be evil. It must be witchcraft.
Yeah, and then they can think, oh, well, I'm not participating in that lower behavior. So I'm the righteous one.
Right, exactly. Further feeding into the ego. And it's all attachment to the storyline. And you cannot really have both in the same moment. You're either listening to the universe and singing along, or you're living the story of the ego. Some teachers say you have to die, like physically, in order to have self-realization. Some teachers say it's not accessible in this life. I totally disagree. And there's a lot of teachers throughout time who have totally disagreed with that statement. And they say enlightenment is possible in this life. It's actually the point of this life. The point of this life is to come into remembrance of yourself and live without the story. That way you can be the empty vessel through which those beautiful vibrations flow, through which love flows, through which truth flows, through which unity flows. It's absolutely possible in this life. You don't have to die in order to know yourself. Symbolically, maybe. Symbolically, you got to be willing to pull the plug on the story and say, you know what? This is one version. It's a version that I've chosen to live by for a few years. But you know what? It's not the only version. There's lots of versions. And because there's lots of versions, that means that, they're not really completely true. So they might have a little truth to them, like a little materialistic truth, right? A little physical, alive truth. But ultimately, they're only a wee little bit of the story. It's like when you look at a picture at the museum and that picture covers that whole wall, you can't look at the whole picture. You look at part of it. The bird draws your eye, or whatever is over there, or whatever, or a color. But rarely is a person able to sit and to take the whole thing in, except maybe a meditator. A meditator who knows how to open up their vision, right? Or maybe a songwriter who knows how to tap into the energy of the universe, can sit there and just take the entire thing in and not have a preference, because the moment that the preference sets in, then your eyes go there to the lotus, or there to the prayer board. Right. The moment that the preference sets in, the separation sets in also. Courage is to sit there and take it all in. And in order to do so, one needs to be an empty vessel. Other questions or reflections? I say thank you to Ma. That was something. Thank you. She tells me what to say, and oftentimes students say, "Can you repeat that?" Like, nope. That's why it's recorded. Because it's just conscious flow. Yeah. So my suggestion to you, my challenge to you, and your mission if you choose to accept it, is take this week and practice being the empty vessel. The story starts to creep in and starts screaming at you obnoxiously. You don't have to shut it down. That isn't going to work. You ever try to tell a screaming child to be quiet? Totally. And turn it on up. So instead, you just say, shh, shh, shh. I know you want to be important. So, and people might not understand if you do this out loud, but I know you want to be important. So, would you be a good teacher and teach me how to be quiet? When I first started meditating, and I love meditating, like ever since I was a child, to just sit there in the quiet. But life is tumultuous, and during the more tumultuous parts of my life, it wasn't easy to sit. And I was like, well, I can't just shut it down. It doesn't want to shut down. Like you said, it turns itself up. So I started to talk to myself like that, which might sound crazy, but it's not. And I would just say to that voice inside, I know you want to be important. I know you really want to be important. Can you be an important teacher to me right now? And just teach me how to sit quietly. And inevitably, it worked. It would always work. I would use a low tone voice, typically do it out loud. Sometimes if there were other people around who wouldn't understand, I did it quietly. But it worked. It's like it was a response. And the response was, sure, temporarily till I get bored. But that's all you needed, a little bit of space. And then when the ego got bored, it was like, time to wake up. Get aggravated, get impatient. Where's the next shiny thing? So fun. Did you have a question?
It was a question more of a comment. So this morning I was reading one of the books in the library. It was called The Journey Within. And that sounds similar to what they were saying was, the mind needs something to do. And when it sounded, that was like the perfect example. I was like, it's like, give it something to do. Again, like a kid, right? It's bored. It's like, okay, I'm going to jump on you and that. But like, if you hold this for mommy, and then, and it lasts for a while. But I thought it was brilliant. So thank you for using that example. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is it exactly. Mm-hmm. It is it exactly. It's like a little bit of that reverse psychology. Don't be listening right now. It's a little bit of that reverse psychology. And so, yeah. Any other questions or reflections? Yes.
I'm working through this very thing with the children in my class. I'm a third grade teacher, and there are times throughout the day when they are talking to one another a lot. And this past week, I know why it was, because they haven't been outside a lot. They have all this pent-up energy, and I found that I was saying things like, we need to bring it closer, we need to not talk out loud even to ourselves. And it was just because everybody's talking, and so the volume, of course, is increasing. And then I go home and I reflect and I think, I don't want that. I don't want it to be like that. So we need to come together in more of like a class meeting to talk about what are we going to do? Like, when's a good time to talk? Should I put on some music? What are little cues that are going to help you? Because there's a fine line between allowing them to talk while they're working, writing, whatever, and then also accomplishing a task that they've been given. But it's a fine line.
It's a very fine line. And there have to be guidelines and boundaries in life. There need to be guidelines and boundaries. We function best when there's compassionate guidelines and boundaries. And one of the things that you can do is incorporate, which I'm sure you already do, but you can incorporate conscious listening exercises throughout the day that only take a few moments. How many kids are in your class?
21.
21. So 21 kids, you can tell them, we're going to take 10 seconds in silence. And in that silence, you have to listen very, very carefully to the silence. And then we're going to start, because your kids sit in desks, right? Then we're going to start over here. And this child is, with their eyes closed, going to say out loud the sound they hear. One sound can only last for like 3 seconds. And then the next child will follow immediately and immediately and immediately. And what you're going to end up with is a song. But it's going to be a song that they hear from silence.
Yes.
And it just gives them a way of expressing themselves. And now for the next thing that we're going to do.
Right.
Yeah. And so little exercises like that throughout the day, which help them to tune in
Yes.
instead of out.
Yeah.
I just got a book for kids. It's called Breathe Like a Bear.
Mm.
And there's a line, it's a yoga teacher for kids, but it's not, but it's like little exercises and stuff. You might want to check it out. Breathe Like a Bear.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Are you a yoga teacher?
No, not yet.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Although I've been mistaken for one, and I've made a personal commitment, whether I can find the money or not, I'm determined to learn and teach yoga.
Wonderful. It's a good path for you, for sure. Okay. Any other thoughts? We're good? Let's sit tall and close the eyes. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. Together we'll lift our voices in one Om and the All Beings mantra. Taking a breath in. Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Now and always, honoring your light and the light of all beings everywhere. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's so wonderful to gather with you. Thank you to our retreat attendees, to our wonderful volunteers, to our staff, to the mother, to all of it. It's a good path for you, for sure. Yeah. Enjoy the day, everybody.